Over the years I've reviewed quite a few dash cams and most of those have come from China, but it turns out that one of China's favourite brands of dash cam is actually from the Netherlands. It's Philips. Now I'm going to review two of their dash cams that have just arrived in the UK. I've been in touch with the sole distributor. We've got the budget ADR610 and the more expensive ADR810. Now these have only just arrived in the country, so we've got this multilingual packaging. I think they're going to redo the packaging on them, but it doesn't matter. The instructions are in English inside anyway. We'll look at the 810 to start with first of all. So again, this is the higher end of the two models. We'll see what's inside the packet. It's a good simple dash cam actually. One thing I like, it's got this nice car power adapter here with a right angle plug on it and also a button on there, and you press that to activate the emergency recording function. Much better than reaching across onto the windscreen to press a button on the dashcam, I think. The cable length on that is approximately 13 feet or 4 meters long, and on the other end of that you've got a micro USB plug, which is also at a right angle. So it's got a right angle at both ends, this power lead, so someone's thought that out quite sensibly. Now we've also got this little mount. It's an adhesive mount. It sticks to your windscreen, obviously. You've got this nut. We'll just unscrew that there, which enables the joint to move around. Very simple mount, quite effective. Obviously, once you've stuck it in your car, it remains there, and then when you want to remove the dash cam, it slides into and out of this bit on the top of the camera here. Let's just have a quick look around the camera, take off this protective film off the screen, quite a reflective screen that, and then take off this little bit off the lens at the front. So as you can see, we've got an all black front on this, which makes it quite difficult to spot through the car windscreen, rather than having sort of chrome bits on it and things. Got quite a few vents on the bottom here. I'll mention more about those in the specs in a bit. And also we've got up, down and OK here, and again another emergency button on there, which works the same as the one on the power adapter. We've got a slider switch here which goes across the micro SD card slot, and that's the on-off switch. You just leave it on, of course, all the time, but by having that slider switch it means that when you put your micro SD card in here, by the way I'm using a class 10 32 gig card, when you slide that switch across it means the SD card can't pop out. The other end we've got an HDMI out if you want to play back your footage through a TV, and we've got that USB power port at the top. I'll just plug that in there to show you how the right angle plug goes in there, and then the wire goes up and you route it around the headlining in the front of your car to keep it nice and neat. And that's it. It's a good simple dash cam. Nice to review a simple one without GPS, all that kind of stuff on it. Good basic, simple but good quality dash cam. Looking in the user manual here, we can see in here we've got three things. We've got a spare adhesive mount, which enables you to take the mount out of your car and put it back in another car if you were to swap cars. Obviously you could only do that once with that spare mount unless you buy some more of those. And then we've also got a warranty card. It says it's only valid in the People's Republic of China. However, I've spoken to the distributor and he says no, there's a 12-month warranty at least in the UK, so don't worry about the warranty on this one. The manual's all in nice, good, clear English as you'd expect from Philips, and it's done a bit of my job for me here. It says a 32 gig card in 1080p 30 will hold 320 minutes worth of video, so that's over 5 hours before it starts rewriting over the card again. And something else caught my eye on the specifications sheet. If you look about 2/3 of the way down, you can see the operating temperature goes from -10 degrees C to 65 degrees C. 65 degrees C converts to 149 degrees Fahrenheit. I often get people asking me, where can I get a dashcam from that's going to work well in a hotter country? So hopefully this one will satisfy those requirements. Now let's look at what you get in the cheaper of the two models, the ADR610. Pretty much the same stuff. The mount is very similar. It won't actually fit in the other one, but it's the same kind of idea. You've got a little joint on there, adhesive pad on the back, spare adhesive pad inside the box as well. We've got the same warranty and then the instruction booklet, and the same length of power lead, albeit this one's a little bit more traditional. Doesn't have a button on this one. It's more of a sticky out kind of power adapter, and on the other end we've got a USB mini B this time rather than a micro B. Now looking at the camera itself, let's just get the protective film off the screen on this one, and again there'll be one of those on the lens on the other side as well. Make sure you remove that, otherwise everything will look a bit blue. So you can see even though the design of the camera is quite different, it's got the same functionality. We're putting a 32 gig class 10 micro SD card into the spring-loaded slot on the side of it here. If we look on the back, we've got these keys underneath the screen, which are kind of soft keys. They react to whatever's going on the screen at the time, and it'll tell you what button does what at the bottom of the LCD screen. Microphone, speaker at the top, HDMI out again, and a USB mini B at the top there. I'll just plug that wire in to show you that this isn't a right angle USB Mini B on this one, so plug it in there. You can see that it does stick out a little bit more than the other one, and of course you put that up into the headlining of your car as well to keep it out of the way. Looking at the instructions in this one, very similar to the other one, very clear, nicely laid out, same kind of information. One thing that both cameras have is this driver fatigue alert. I thought I'll mention it in this one. The idea is after you've been driving a while, it works out how long you've been driving and it'll beep to you every couple of hours or so when it thinks you're going to get tired. I haven't switched that on, but I just thought I'd mention what it is so that when you see it later on coming past in the menus, you know what that's about. And one thing that caught my eye on the specs here, notice about halfway down it says real-time clock retaining period at least 5 days. Now why that's in there is because both of these cameras use a capacitor rather than a battery. That's how come they can both operate at high temperatures. You see this one goes up to 65 degrees C as well. If you had a battery in a camera, it tends to react poorly when they get warm, whereas these don't have a battery, they have a capacitor. Now because it's got no battery in it, you might think it will forget the time and date that you've set in the clock, but it won't. Well, at least for 5 days anyway, and hopefully you'll use the car within that period. Now we'll just look at the operation and menus on both these cameras, so we'll start with the higher end 810 first. I'm plugging in a powered USB lead in the side here to simulate the fact that you've started your car engine and it's been supplied with power, and then of course when it gets the power it automatically starts recording immediately, as you can see on screen there. Now at the right hand side we've got 3 buttons. If we press the top button we can stop the camera from recording, and if we press it again we can start it recording. You can manually start and stop it, although generally you wouldn't need to do that. Now on the right hand side, that emergency button, which is the same one you've got on that lighter power supply, if you press that, changes colour, and what's happening there is it stores a file that consists of 30 seconds before you press the button and 30 seconds after the button. 1 minute file. It puts that in a separate folder on the memory card so that it doesn't get overwritten when the memory card is full. Now the down button turns the voice recording on or off, and then the middle button gets you into the menu. So we'll just quickly have a look around the settings and menus here. Now as you can see, very simple clear icons, easy to understand, and there's only a few of them as well, so it'll only take a minute or two to go through these. So if we look at the video options, this is the playback. We can play back the normal videos, the emergency videos, or get back to the main menu. So if I just page down through some of these, past these nighttime ones, we'll get into a daytime one and click OK on that. Now we can play it, lock it, or delete it. So we'll just play it, and there you go. The video's playing on the screen. Nice big screen on this one as well. And as you can see, we can fast forward, or rewind, or pause. All the stuff that you'd expect that you could do just playing back on the screen. It's always useful to have a screen on a camera to show somebody something at the scene of an accident if it does unfortunately happen. Now we'll back out of that menu by pressing that emergency button. That takes you back out of each option. Next one down is resolution. We can change the resolution. I recorded all my clips at 1080p 30 out of those 3 choices there. Wide dynamic range, might as well just leave that on. It does improve the image quality in certain lighting conditions. Collision detection, that's your shock sensor, same as pressing that emergency button on the right hand side, but you can set the sensitivity of it there. I set it to low, and it hasn't been set off by going over speed bumps or potholes, which is good. That's where you set the date and time. That's where you decide how long the screen stays on. I always have it low, so 30 seconds after I set off the screen goes blank, so it doesn't distract me while I'm driving, but you can leave it on all the time if you want. Obviously format the memory card inside the camera before you do anything else when you first get it. You can change the language there, but I probably wouldn't recommend it unless you know the other two. Voice recording, have it on or off as a default, and then the button later on you can turn it on or off when you've got the camera recording, of course. Exposure value, you can knock that up or down if you think the camera's recording too dark or too light. I just left it in auto. You can have the date stamp on the footage, or you can turn that off if you don't like having a date stamp. Motion detection is something that will only work if you've got a continuous power supply. I'll mention more about that when I go on to the other camera, so leave that off unless you're going to definitely use it for that purpose. Driver fatigue alert, we mentioned that before, the thing that beeps at you every now and then to tell you might be tired. Change everything back to default. Here's the version of the firmware on the camera that I'm looking at, and that takes you back to the beginning. So that didn't take long, did it? There's only a few options in there, nice and simple. So you can record if you want, you can press the emergency button very easily, you can stop recording, you can get into the menus, you can get back out of the menus, and you can turn the voice recording off or on. Very simple camera, very easy to use. And then of course when you turn off the power, which I'm doing now by pulling out the power, the camera stops recording, saves the file, and switches off. Okay, now let's have a look at the 610 to see how that operates. It's going to be very similar, so I'll be able to skip past a few of these options. Again, same idea. I've put the power supply in there to simulate your car engine starting up and supplying the camera with power. Notice the LED at the top indicates what's going on. So green is standby, red is recording. So it takes a few seconds, this one, but then it's gone red now, so it's recording, as you can see on the screen as well from those options. So again, these buttons at the bottom match up with whatever's on screen at the time. So that's your emergency one. Next one down is your record, video playback, get into the menu and turn it off if you wanted to. So let's just stop the recording by press that one. We can get into the playback menu. Again, we've got two options, emergency recordings or last record it says there, but basically that's all the other recordings. So we'll just page up through a couple of these and just play a random one there. Again, you can see, quite easy to see on screen what's going on here. These do play back with sound as well, quite nice and clear on this particular model, not so much on the other one. And again, you've got the option to fast forward things, play in slow motion, rewind, all the kind of stuff that you could do on the other camera. So let's back out of this now, and we'll go and have a look at some of those other menu options. We can delete the files there as well if we wanted to, but probably no need to because the camera will delete them eventually. But if you've got locked files, emergency ones, you can of course delete those or unlock them in those menus as well. Right, if we go into the setup menu here, you'll see it's not as pretty as it was on the 810, it's just a load of text, but same options. You can record in 1080p or 720p. Automatic recording, obviously you want it to automatically record, so we just leave that on. Again, obviously voice recording on or off. Collision detection, high sensitivity or low sensitivity. Again, haven't had any issues with that on this camera. Change the clock, whether you want the date stamp on or off. Slideshow is for playback. If you leave it on, it'll play back one clip and then the next one after, rather than just one clip at a time. Volume is the volume of the internal speaker. And monitor mode and motion detection, we'll look at these in the manual now to explain exactly what those are. So monitor mode, it requires an additional power supply. The monitor mode function will reduce video footage down to 1 frame per second to save storage capacity. When activated, it will enter monitor mode 1 minute after no movements are detected in the camera's field of view. When any movement is detected again, normal recording starts immediately. And motion detection, which also requires an additional power supply. The motion detection function will stop recording 1 minute after no movements are detected in the field of view. When any movement is detected again, normal recording starts immediately. Hope that was nice and clear for you. But basically they both require an additional power supply, as in a continuous power supply, which means they have to be wired into the car, and that's not something I'm doing during this test, so I'm not testing both those features out. Right, now exposure value obviously same as before. Language, we've got the same options as we had before. And driver fatigue alarm, mentioned that earlier on. Format the card in the camera, I think we've done that one to death. How long you want before the LCD screen turns off, again I've set mine to 30 seconds. Here's where you change everything back to default if you mess stuff up, and under the about menu you can see that the firmware version is version 1000, or is that 1.0, but anyway that's what's under there. Now just as before, we'll get the camera recording here. Once we remove the power supply from the camera will stop what it's recording, save it to the memory card and power down. Now I mounted both cameras side by side in the car windscreen here. They're a bit off centre, that's so I could mount them next to one another. Ideally you put them a bit more behind the rear view mirror, but that means we can get some side by side comparison footage. And just before I show you those clips, just a reminder, there are downloadable sample clips that I've made available. There's a link to those in the video description. Those will look better than they do on YouTube. But let's get on with these YouTube clips anyway. So as you can see here, I'm showing you the Philips ADR810. Conveniently enough, the timestamp also tells you the model of camera and puts that at the bottom of the screen there, so it saves me a job having to title all these videos up. But you can see from this it looks really good, nice and clear, good wide field of view, in fact wide enough so that it captures the bottom part of my rear view mirror on the right hand side. Now going over to the ADR610, slightly narrower field of view, not narrow at all, it's actually 100 degrees, but it's plenty for most car windscreens, as you can see here, see all across the road as well. So both cameras doing a good job there. I've got nothing to complain about either of these. They both look nice, decent quality video. Now let's do a little bit more comparison here. I'm going to do a split screen and bring in the 610 from the right hand side. So I've labelled them up here because the timestamps missed off the end there, so you can see ADR810 on the left, that's the more expensive one, the ADR610 on the right hand side. Now of course, because I've cropped these images in half, you're not getting the full effect of the road, so don't worry, you will normally see more than this. But as you can see, the one on the right has got a slightly sort of yellowy tinge to it, the one on the left is a bit more vibrant, and of course having a wider field of view on the one on the left means that that white car in front looks further away than it does on the right hand side. But again, nothing wrong with either clip there, both perfectly fine for use as accident footage, in fact more than fine. Now the next thing we'll do is see how each camera copes when you join the clips together. You know, Dashcams record things in small clips like 3 minutes, and your memory card fills up with 3-minute clips. When you join a couple of those together, sometimes you get a jump between them, but you've just gone past a join there and you didn't notice it. It was just before that red car. So that's the 610. That's how it copes with joining clips together. They're frame perfect when you do it. Now the 810 does things slightly different. When you join two clips together, you'll find that there's a bit of a jump like that, and that's because the second clip, or the next clip along, always includes a little bit of a repeat from the previous clip, last fraction of a second or so. That's so you don't miss anything, but they've got different ways of dealing with that. Now another thing that they're quite different about is low light footage. First off, we'll start off with the 610. As you can see here, seems to be coping quite well. This is a well lit area. It's got quite a lot of street lights, some shop lights as well. This is a slightly less well lit area. We've got more space between these street lights and less of them, so you can see it's a little bit darker. And then finally, this lane here, there are no street lights, so I'm only lighting up with my car headlights, which by the way are on full beam at the moment, and you can see not very good there. Can't see too much on the 610. Now remember, I've got these cameras side by side, so we can do a direct comparison, the same footage at the same time. So this is the 810 going through the town here. Again, that looks fine, but it looked fine on the other one as well, because there's quite a lot of light red. One thing might worth looking at the bottom there, it says ISO. Notice that number's changing. It's adjusting its exposure depending on the situation, and it's showing you down there what ISO it's using. It seems to be doing it all the time. So that looks all right there. The big difference between them is when you get on the road with no street lights. Again, exactly the same footage as before, shot at the same time with my full beam on over the same stretch of road. You can see the difference here between the two cameras. So that's what you're really paying for when you're getting the 810 as opposed to the 610. Excellent low light capabilities. In fact, this is probably some of the best low light footage I think I've shot with a dash cam. Now, while the 810 is definitely better than the 610 as far as low light goes, surprisingly enough, the cheaper of the two cameras is quite a lot better at recording audio. I'm going to show you that now by flipping back and forth between the two cameras. Okay, so I'll just say a few words to the camera now so that you can get an idea about the sound quality of the built-in microphones. So the sound that you're listening to at the moment has been recorded by the camera itself rather than my studio microphones. So you better hear obviously that the sound isn't as good as the rest of the voiceover, but hopefully you'll be able to hear something that I'm saying. I'm talking at a pretty sensible volume. So if it isn't coming through, I'll be a little bit disappointed. So I suppose from that I am disappointed with the sound from the 810, but I am quite impressed with the sound on the 610. One thing I should mention though, quite a lot of people aren't too interested in the sound quality on cameras and they will switch the microphone off. Other people that are really interested in it seem to want to record conversations they might be having with the police. But I want to point something out. When the policeman pulls you over and he says, please turn off the ignition, your camera's going to stop recording anyway. Just something to think about there. I suppose I should also mention that that blue light on the 810 could be a bit distracting at night. There's no way to switch it off, so you might want to find a way to hide it away behind your rear view mirror. Also, I did find the micro SD card was a little bit tricky trying to get that out of the 810. Once you've slid the switch out of the way, it's still buried a long way down inside the camera and you do need a pair of tweezers to get it out. Now, as far as looking at the memory cards on both cameras, this is the 610 on screen now. Both of them use the MOV file format. You can see the two folders there for emergency recordings and the normal ones. The 810 has the same setup, but the file names are a little bit more descriptive, showing the time and date that each file was recorded. If you're in the UK and you're interested in purchasing either of these two cameras, I've got links up in the video description to take you through to either eBay or Amazon, depending on your preference. One thing I will mention though, these are not cheap budget cameras. The 610, the cheaper of the two, costs just under £100, whereas the 810 costs about £160. Now I know there's a lot of people won't want to pay that for a dash camera, but I also know there's an awful lot of people out there that get in touch and say they're looking for something a little bit more reliable, perhaps with a warranty and a recognisable brand name, and maybe these will fit the bill. But anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.